How's it going? And welcome to episode 183 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter and on YouTube at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me at 80 grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin Hastings can be followed at Hastings Kevin. We've got a great show. We are back. We are officially in off-season mode. We took our annual 1 week break. We are right back at it, Kevin, and plans to be here every single week moving forward. Various times, various days of the week, I think, throughout the off season as our schedules will allow. So, if you're trying to watch us on YouTube, thank you so much. But you're probably gonna not have a set schedule to set your clocks by. But we'll still be putting out all our episodes on Sundays, Sunday mornings, at some point before noon Eastern. I'll have those out. But Kevin, glad to have you back at you. 2024 is done. It's in the books. And I will be the first one to say good riddance because I had a terrible season. As I was telling you right before we clocked in here. Not my best showing, as most of my league mates will attest to. And I will totally atone for that. I will admit that. Whatever I need to do to make up for it next season, I totally will. And the first thing I think I'm going to be doing is cutting out many leagues, and especially ones that take up or that have a necessity for all of my attention. And of course, I'm alluding to doing fab leagues, but honestly, even probably DCs and stuff like that, just cutting those back, having to put in all that effort and all that brain power. I really want to be able to focus on a very select few leagues, and see how that works out for me. How was your 2024?
Well, it was profitable, so that's a good
Nice.
thing.
Okay,
I
that's
did not
one.
win a single league. I had, I believe, 3 seconds, 3 or 4 thirds, so hence the cashing enough to be
There
profitable,
you go.
but I think I'm in the same boat. I may have more leagues than I had this past season in 2025, but I'm gonna have less fab leagues. I'm gonna get back into more DCs. I only had 1 this year, finished 4th, I believe. And I feel like I'm the amount of this the analysis that we put in, as I was telling you before the show, I feel like I'm pretty close to ready to start
Mhm.
drafting 50 rounds of drafting holds now, which we can start next week.
Yep.
So I think I'm probably more DCs and gladiators this year and a little less fab leagues, but maybe more leagues overall.
Yeah, I can get behind, especially the gladiators. They're so fun. I mean, just in general. And to not well, you can obviously keep track of your team throughout the season, but to know that you can kind of set it and forget it, even more so than a best ball. It's like, all right, I literally shouldn't be watching this because I can't do anything
Right.
about it.
Zero you can do. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, totally on board with that for sure. It's I think it's weird, obviously coming from us. We've been doing 183 episodes of a show dedicated to Fab. To say that we're going to be doing less Fab next season, especially if we rewind the tape, and you'll hear the probably exact opposite words out of at least my mouth. I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but I think both of our mouths at some point last October, we were pushing and pushing. Let's do some fab leagues right now, early drafts. I'll still stand by the idea of doing a fab league draft in October is smart in a lot of ways, because you can make up for all those mistakes in the draft room come the end of March, early April in the fab run, the same as everybody else in your league can do. But I think where I would twist that, say, okay, you still probably need to have a budget of how many fab leagues you're going to do. And if you're going to do a fab league in October, sure, but it probably should take away from the fab leagues you're going to end up doing, you're going to draft in March, as well. So that's where I stand there. Yeah. So it sounds like you're in a similar boat.
Yeah, I think so. It is a ton of fun, and I enjoy Fab. I actually missed it last weekend. I missed doing Fab. I was sitting around on a Sunday
What am
afternoon
I gonna
thinking, like, what should I be doing right now? Oh yeah, Fab. I don't have to. Yeah, I and also the best laid plans, right? I can talk about this all I want right now, but when I start getting asked to jump in drafts or I start seeing what's available in the lobby, a lot can change.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. Well, things that actually are happening right now that we don't get to talk about. Like we don't, well, not that we don't get to, we just choose not to because we try not to do 3-hour pods every single week. Is that there's real baseball happening, and with minimum fantasy implications. You are doing the playoff hold'em, correct? On NFBC, right? I did
Yep.
not do that, and you know what? I feel this giant weight off my shoulders that I can just enjoy watching and playing baseball. I threw some money down on a team to win the whole thing, a futures bet, fine. But I'm like, I don't care who hits the home runs. I don't care who gets the who scores the runs. It doesn't matter. It's just watching baseball, and it's
It's been a
beautiful.
good week for that. It's been
Yeah.
an amazing week for
Oh my
that,
god.
actually.
Well, it started off worrisome. You know, no offense. Congratulations to your Royals for going into the next round. But the fact that like all of the first wild card, 3 of the 4 wild cards went sweep. Like, I mean, as much as you can sweep a best of 3 series, obviously you only need to win the first 2 games. But the Mets really they made it all worthwhile um, with Pete Alonso's home run, the 3-run shot, and the way he ran around the bases and all. It was just, yeah, it was beautiful. And then from there it's been all up, like it's been clear sailing as far as pleasantries to be able to watch games and the competition and what have you. So yes, congratulations to your Royals. I'm rooting for them all the way. We made a joke with my buddy in my home league that we had this team, my dynasty league, who just they were the team that was like they should be better than they are. They make it to the first round of the playoffs a couple years in a row, and they would lose every round. So the joke was always like, "Hey, great, you made the playoffs. It's like a bye for the other team," and that's who the Orioles are right now. And then sooner or later, they'll just be better. And then this guy in my home league won back-to-back championships like 2 and 3 years ago. So sooner or later, it will end up breaking. But you have to feel for the Orioles and Orioles fans because last year they were a year early, and they were 100 games, yada yada yada. This year they should have, it almost felt like they should have been better than they were, and definitely not expected to be a first round exit. Um, but I'm not trying to take anything away. I'm wearing my Reagan shirt. I'll
Very
be
nice.
Yeah, that's not bad. He looked pretty good. The whole cramping thing that or the cap was it cramping in his calf that he was reporting after that start was a little
Yeah.
worrisome. Turned out to be okay, so we're not too worried about that. Other injuries across baseball, you can't unfortunately can't say the same. Joe Musgrove is who I am alluding to, obviously in San Diego, going to have Tommy John surgery. Won't see him for another year and a half. Uh, you know, Probably, yeah, not until maybe for lucky spring training of 2026. Um, but yeah, what's been your favorite part of the playoffs thus far, and then we'll get into our predictions.
I think you alluded to most of it. The atmosphere in San Diego, that's something you didn't bring up. The atmosphere in San Diego is phenomenal. And so that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, obviously I'm ecstatic that the Royals moved on as I'm sitting here watching them down 1 run in the ninth
Yeah,
inning as we're recording, and Bobby Witt Jr. at the plate with a full count and fouling pitches off. So yeah, a little distracted here as we're recording. Game 1, 6-5 Yankees in the ninth at the moment. But yeah, and then of course that Mets Brewers game
oh
3 was
man.
was fantastic. And you just felt it coming right after Alonso missed the foul ball,
Oh, yeah.
and
Had to make up. Yep.
probably could have legitimately called interference on that fan pushing the net out towards him if they wanted to. But to come back and then hit the 3-run, it's we see, it feels like we see that quite often. A blunder like that in the field and then come up and make up for it at the plate. It was amazing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Bobby Witt striking out there to end that at bat. No longer full. But yeah, here's hoping, especially as a Red Sox fan, I'm doubly rooting for your Royals to come back here somehow, some way, and through the series itself as well. So I mean, we're not halfway into the playoffs, but we're around deep. So we're a little late to the party here as far as predictions go. But I mean, I told you, who I threw my money down on for the for the whole thing. But walk me through what you expect to see throughout the rest of the playoffs, with the teams that we have left.
Well, I'd be lying if I said I expect the Royals to advance. I do think there is a way for them to do so. With the way that the American League off days are spread out, they have an extra one just so that they can get on alternating days with the National League. The American League's got an extra off day. They get an off day after game one, another off day after game two, the actual travel day, and then an off day after game four, the other travel day.
Mm-hmm.
So with Reagan's going game two, the Royals can get 2 starts out of him on normal rest. Still, of course, that means picking up another win in there somewhere, even if Reagan's can pull off 2 victories. But yeah, the Royals really needed to try to pull out game one, and they are down to their last strike at the moment. But I still see a path there, but I would expect the Yankees to advance. The other American League series, I think, is a toss-up because for the same reason, Skubal not pitching until game 2 can still get 2 games on regular rest as long as they win another game to get them to that game 5. So that one I think is the closest of the 4 series to me. But I think if the Tigers can scratch one other game out, it's going to be really tough for Cleveland to beat Tariq Skubal in a game. The National League, I'm a little more. They're going to be fun series. I don't think they're going to be quick series. I think they'll both go 4 or 5. But I feel pretty comfortable in picking both San Diego and Philadelphia to move on here, in spite of Philadelphia already being down to the Mets 1-0. I still feel like that Philadelphia has the upper hand in this series. So I'm thinking San Diego and the winner of the Kansas City New York Yankees series in the World Series.
Oh, I like the confidence there. Regardless of what happens or who wins, that team is going. Sorry, Cleveland. Sorry, Detroit. Detroit's a feel good story though, and like Detroit's the story.
Detroit's fun.
It's the fun story.
0.6% chance of making the playoffs in early August.
Yeah, that whole Wii board that we always see in my Twitter feed has been fun to watch, especially that one specifically. Yeah, I mean, I think,
and I want to push back against some Uncle Ted. Welcome and thank you for jumping in the chat. I don't buy into this. A lot of people say this. MLB needs Yankees, Dodgers. They need the ratings. The ratings last year for Rangers, Arizona were down. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Right? Give me the most exciting baseball. I don't care who else is watching.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
It's
watching.
not going away. It's not like the ratings are going to be bad enough. Baseball's going away and we don't get to watch it anymore. I don't know why anybody cares about ratings.
As long as you can actually watch the games until they start taking it away. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, my money's on San Diego to make it all the way through. You hit the nail on the head. The excitement with the team, with the fans, just everything around. I mean, I'm also just rooting for Don Orsillo in general, because I tend to do that. So San Diego, probably. I mean, you hate to say it, but it's like they're probably facing something like the Yankees. And you know what, Uncle Ted, Yankees, San Diego, you're gonna get the same kind of ratings. So there you go. But yeah, I
And in
mean,
that series, we're barely 3 innings in, and we're getting the best of both worlds. We're getting all that excitement from San Diego. They've got 5 runs already, but we've also seen a Shohei Ohtani
yes, we have.
postseason 3-run home run.
Yeah.
What else can we ask for?
No, nothing else. Or at least, don't get greedy, everybody. Um, cool. So that's it's gonna be fun to keep watching. Obviously, you've got lots of ways to highlight that if you want to, if you're not already, just remember PL Pro, PL Plus, they get you into the Pitcher List Discord. Baseball doesn't turn off for Pitcher List. So jump in that Discord. Playoff baseball, that Discord is popping off probably more so than any other point in the season. So much great discussion there. So make sure that you are considering that. If you join, PL Pro now, you're going to get, all the insights through the off season, and it, get the yearly membership, and you'll get all the stuff going through 2025 as well, starting now. So keep an eye on any kind of promos that Nick Pollock throws out there on his podcast and during his live streams as well, to get a good deal on that membership. Kevin, we got some so today we're going to be talking a lot about the surprises that we saw, or honestly, for many of these, didn't see in 2024. So the assignment here, which you came up with, I thought was great, was find the players who put up, stats that you just were not aware of because of various reasons. Number one reason, probably you just didn't draft them or you didn't roster them. And obviously I'm only talking to you, so it's just you and me. Didn't roster these guys on your teams. And then when you look at these leaderboards, you're like, whoa, wait, what? Like, this is not what I expected out of him. This is not what not was suggested by anybody. So that's what we're going to get into, and we're going to do it the same way we do all of our fab episodes. We're going to go category by category, or at least category groupings, and see what kind of names pop up, and we're going to get to all that right after this break. All right, we are back. You, of course, are listening to On the Wire. We have a great first episode topic of the off season to get into as we look back at 2024. This is our way of like trying to figure out the lessons that we could have learned based on the players that we're seeing hit the top, or at least the top 50 of the category leaderboards. We're looking at 5x5 categories, standard categories, and then we break it down into any of the extra stats that kind of explain it away. But let's get into some of these players that kind of stood out, Kevin. We're gonna start in offense, and I'm gonna let you start it off because I said this before we started recording. These are great episodes for us because we get to start talking about players that we never get to talk about in the regular season, because obviously there's a lot of players that just they get drafted, they never get dropped, they're never available, so they're not something that we're considering for fab. Now we get to start talking about players that, even though they might have been surprises, they were still not on our teams and they were on other people's teams all season long. We could not consider drafting or fabbing for them. So you had a great name here, so I'm going to let you lead us off. We're talking power, home runs, RBIs in either one of those categories or both. Who's the first name that popped for you when you were looking at those leaderboards?
Yeah, this is a guy that we heard about quite a bit, and I think most people probably realize how good his second half was, but I'm sure there's some people out there that don't realize just how good it was. I will tell you this: he had 310 plate appearances after July 6th, right? Slash 258, 351, 577 20 home runs, 51 RBI, 68 runs, 20 stolen bases. That's a 40-40 pace. That's over a 40-40 pace. He gets over 600 plate appearances in a season. That's almost 140 run pace and over 100 RBI pace. So this being power, which was the big concern. We're talking about Corbin Carroll. Most people probably realized that when I started talking after early July, because that is when he really picked it up. But yeah, the power finally came back. I still am convinced it has something to do with that shoulder. I don't know if his shoulder is healthy yet, but it definitely sure felt healthy to him in the second half. That is for certain. So a guy that was being drafted in the fourth or fifth spot in draft season fell in some leagues due to some worry about the shoulder, but he was still top 5 in many. And now we're seeing and hearing he's probably late first, maybe even early second. And as long as that shoulder's healthy, somebody's probably getting a steal at that spot if the second half he put up is anything like what he's going to do going forward. And we really have, other than worry about that shoulder, once again, I would love to have more news on that. But it really seems like he is back to the guy that people were drafting in the early first round back in March. And we could see that going forward in 2025 and for a long time, right? He's still young, young, young.
Yeah, Carroll is just like somebody that I was definitely staying away from just due to injury concerns, due to, the whole idea of, not being able to repeat and, not, running the way that you thought that he might, but to see that second half. And of course, this is always the best topic, right? It's like who had the best second half? Can they have that continue to run throughout? And I was trying to just stall myself so that I could find his rolling chart over at on the PLV apps, and it's pretty spot on. It's like from in this most of what really kind of drove him through the second half came not only in the second half but came in the final month of the season. As his process plus chart, and again, you see all of these for every single player throughout the season if you're a PL Pro member. But I'll verbalize this one for everybody. It's like what was really driving everything was the power, and it came at the very end of the season. Whether we're talking about Kevin, you're talking about the whole second half is great, but that power didn't really show up until September, really, when it came down to it down the stretch. His contact was always A+. His decisions were, even in September, his decisions weren't driving anything. They were all pretty much right around major league average. But it's that contact that stayed steadily way above average, and finally that power kind of came through and drove everything even further along. So even more so than the second half, we're looking at somebody who probably won some head-to-head championships across different leagues as well.
Yeah,
And
we are in a mock draft right now, the Pitcher List podcast mock draft, and Corbin Carroll was just taken as the 20th overall pick. 15 picks later than he was typically taken last season. 10 to 15 picks. Like I said, he did drop a little bit in some drafts due to concern about that shoulder. But yeah, his second half numbers, and you can get in trouble just looking at second halves, right? That's variance. Pick out any half of the games and we can manipulate numbers all we want. But when it's a guy that we know was banged up and maybe he's healthy now, that's a lot different.
yeah. So I'll stay in the same. I'll stay on the same team for my first guy here, and the one that surprised me the
Yeah.
most because I don't ever draft Ketel Marte. Like I just don't. I don't know what it is. I think I had one season where I was totally on board, and he just did not perform. He did not do anything for me, and so I just haven't looked back. And so I missed out completely in 2024. as he, throws up more home runs than I think he had. Well, not definitely think, but more home runs he's ever done in any given season. The fact that he only missed, even with the time he missed at the, toward the end of August, this is a guy who is, still found a way to knock in, 36 home runs, 95 RBI, and continuously kind of mixing and matching where he was being put in the lineup throughout the season, as well as he was trying to, ultimately settle in, obviously, at second base. But with all the moving parts that Arizona saw, he didn't have a solidified place in the lineup throughout the course of the season either. But it's just the fact that the power is what drove his value, as opposed to the speed, which is something that, I feel like Marte has really had, not the calling card per se. He's never been like just a burner, but it, always was the association I always made with Ketel Marte was that, it was going to be speed over power. And he's found a way to, obviously flip that, at least flip my mind completely after looking into this. And every other aspect of his game makes him especially at second base, an easy second, maybe third round in the right situation pick for going into next year. Assuming he can, repeat this. And, his rolling charts, even after coming back from the time missed at the end of August, everything was down in September a little bit, but that power is still was still way above major league average, and still kind of driving his value as well. The next part of this whole setup here for this part of the show is, can these guys repeat what they're doing? You talked about Carroll going in, pick 15. Was that pick 15 overall? No, it was later. Pick 20 overall
20.
in that mock draft
Yeah.
that we just did. Can Marte do what he did in 2024 again? Should we be believing in 36 home runs for Ketel Marte moving forward? Is it the new normal?
Well, it's a career high, and it's 4 more than his previous career high, which he did hit in 2019 when everybody was hitting
Everybody
the
was hitting
ball
home.
out
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
ballpark. Right. So that's what's so surprising about this. I don't think it would have been uh, quite well, of course, it wouldn't have been shocking if he'd have hit less, but even, that 25 to 30 range, because he's had 25 last year. He had the 32 in 2019. Staying healthy has always been an issue for him. We got 136 games, 583 plate appearances, but that's almost 70 less plate appearances than he had last season. He hit 11 more home runs. So I don't think I would expect the 36, but I think, I think Ketel Marte is probably one of these guys just now at 30 years old, about to turn 31. So he'll be 31 for next season. Still not, well above 30. And we see these guys, that they start muscling a few more out than they used to once in a while, as long as they're maintaining the bat speed, which he obviously is, and he's still got the great strikeout and walk rates. So I think I would be comfortable in saying, okay, we're going to get 25 to 30 from him, which he's only done 3 times in his career, including 2024. So kind of, yes, I kind of buy into this, but not all the way to 36, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the skill set has been proven already. I think, to your
Yeah.
point, like 25 home runs and 650 plate appearances last year, and 12 the year before that, in 558 less plate appearances, 30 less plate appearances than he had this year. So I mean, the per plate appearance average is kind of there to show that it's not a fluke. Like, everybody has a career year. To your point, like, this is not a surprise. Like, you're gonna have a career year, and it's not a surprise per se that last year wasn't obviously his career year. It could have been, but it wasn't. And so I like, I will definitely be considering Marte. But I mean, after coming off a career year like this, like, I can't imagine paying up for it though. The way that you
Right.
probably will have to, especially at that middle infield position.
And here's the rub on that, right? Because if you look at the auction calculator and I put it back to 20 games because I'm no longer interested in who's eligible for 2024. I need 20 games played for NFBC formats in 2025. When you start looking at second base, it is bad. It was in 2024. Ketel Marte, far and away, not even close, the best second baseman. Jose Altuve, second. Then a huge drop to Mookie Betts, who
Yeah.
at first glance I was going to say missed a lot of time, but he did have 516 plate appearances and still was not even half as good as far as dollars earned before you add in the positional adjustments
Sure.
to Ketel Marte. Then we're to Bryce Terang already at number 4. Yeah, the 50 stolen bases, but that's all you got. Luis Garcia Jr. and Iker Honer. Now we're only getting stolen base value. Second base was horrible in 2024, which is probably going to drive up Ketel Marte's price even more in 2025, unfortunately.
Yeah. Shout out again to Kyle Bland, director of analytics over at Pitcher List. On a whim in the PL Discord, somebody was talking about, I think it was Steve Gisueli over at Wins Above Fantasy, about trying, or maybe it was Scott Chu. Either way, they were looking for a really easy way of figuring out who's going to be eligible for what positions based on the league settings and format that you're playing. And literally within like, I don't know, like 4 hours,
Pop
Kyle
it right back.
built,
Here you go.
well, he built an app. He just built an
Yeah.
app for us to use and be like, throw in whatever numbers you want. Here you go. This is how many they're going to need, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, crazy, Kyle. Um, Kyle also in that mock draft, he is drafting. I don't know if this was announced officially, but he's supposed to be drafting solely using the first draft of the PLV projections. So it's basically PL bot drafting in this
And he
mock
had the
draft.
number 1 pick.
He did. So of course, you can. Oh, no, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'll let everybody kind of guess in their head who PL bought, at least with the first iteration, which isn't even live yet. It's like it might even change by the time he's done with this draft. But either
Yeah.
way, so it's just fun to be like, oh, we're all drafting against a robot. Perfect. Not the robot.
And not Phil DeSalle.
Not
If he was
Phil.
in the league, we'd be drafting against 2.
All right, so we're still in power. You got another name on here that surprised you, Kevin. Whose power fulfillment actually surprised you as you were looking this over?
Yeah, this one, I knew he had been pretty good. I knew that Oakland had been better than most people realized. I think we started catching on finally and realizing that the Oakland offense was putting up some runs and hitting a lot of home runs, and that was true of their catcher. Shea Langeliers, I don't know if many people realize, had 29 home runs from the catcher position. Number 2 at the position in the home run category. Added on 80 RBI. Like I said, the Oakland offense as a whole was much better than we realized. This is the follow up 22 home runs in 490 plate appearances in 2023. So he hit 22 in 490 and now 29 in 534, right? His walk rates, he was just under 7% last year, up quite a bit above 7% now. His strikeout rate came down a couple percentage points. This really looks like something that we can probably look forward. He's age 26, just getting into his prime. I know there are some conflicting reports about the ballpark in Sacramento. Now, if that is where the A's end up playing in 2025, I'm still maintaining, yes, we're reading and hearing that that's a neutral ballpark for the PCL. Neutral for the PCL is still a whole heck of a lot better than Oakland Coliseum as far as hitting projections, I would say. So this is somebody I'm very interested going into 2025. Low batting average, not something we're too worried about from catchers, although he does get the plate appearances, and that's what's really key here, I think. You know, we're gonna have William Contreras. We're gonna have probably still Salvador Perez, even though he's getting older. Adley Rutschman. Cal Raleigh pushed that 600 plate appearances this year. Will Smith was still close, and JT Real Muto. A lot of people down on Real Muto. The only thing that was down as far as his skills go is the stolen bases. He only had 2. And when you draft him, you're hoping for 10 to 15. But other than that, people were really down on him, but he was there other than that. And the Yainer Diaz and Shea Langeliers are these guys that are going to get the plate appearances we're looking for. So I think he moves up right in with that group if we expect these plate appearances out of him again, especially when 2 seasons now of hitting the long ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's the number of plate appearances that I think surprised me the most, and I know he's going to have that opportunity to, get into the DH spot with the A's. It just we hadn't seen that in the past from Langelier, so it can't be stretched out. It can't be talked about enough about how the impact of of drafting the A's offensive players and pitchers, for that matter, going into Sacramento and playing in that ballpark is going to have on draft. Like the impact of that has to weigh on everybody's minds as you're doing these drafts.
This years are just going to be miserable, right? Like when Darvish left Texas because of how hot and humid it was. That's the whole reason he left. Like, is anybody going to want to stand on that mound and pitch?
No, absolutely.
You know more than me, I think.
I mean,
from that area, doesn't that feel really, really hot? Is what I've heard.
Yeah, no, Sacramento can be absolutely awful. Just definitely Oakland. All right, I lived in Oakland for like 9 years. Oakland was gorgeous. Like
Right.
it was just like the perfect kind of weather. San Francisco was too cold. If you go over the hills to Walnut Creek and Concord, it got too hot. But Oakland, it was like I always joked, like it never got any colder than 55, never got any warmer than 85. It was like this perfect little band. Here I am talking to a guy who lives in Hawaii about perfect weather, but Sacramento completely the opposite. Like it's not a desert, but it's like it was easily 20 degrees warmer at any given point in the summertime in Sacramento than it was in Oakland, California. So that's not going to be pleasant. Sure, to pitch in, it's not going to be pleasant to play in. First and foremost, you're playing in a AAA stadium in a much smaller market. People forget how big of a market Oakland actually is in the Bay Area actually is. The fan base is, I mean, there's gonna be some fans that travel. It's not that long of a drive, right? But I mean, there's so many of them that are so jaded by what transpired, how the team has handled all that. So you're just not gonna get. You're gonna get a minor league, stadium, a group of fans. So, maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong on that. I hope they get. I hope the players get as much support as they possibly can. I can't say the same for the Fishers, and for the rest of the ownership there, but I digress. But how they're going to be the opportunity they're going to get to perform in that stadium, I think has to be addressed in the draft room. Like you have to be considering these things, especially after some of the seasons that we saw some of the Oakland hitters have in 2024. Not a lot of them are free agents. So it's not like they're playing for contracts, but they are going to be entering arbitration soon. So they're either, playing for the right to have the A's trade them off to a better situation so they can avoid arbitration, or, actually playing for arbitration in general, because somebody's going to offer them arbitration. Might not be the A's, but it'll be somebody. All right, I will go back. I will stay in California here for my other power surprise here. And that it was not so much a surprise that he produced, but the fact that Jerks and Profar produced in the power categories. I was very interested in Profar, especially when he re-signed with San Diego, because the way that they treated him when he came in the last time, he got to the top of the lineup. he was scoring all the runs. He was given every opportunity to do so, and he was actually doing it. But now we see, especially from like after the 25% mark, by the end of April, he's basically solidified himself in either the 2 or 3 hole, or maybe throwing down into the 4 hole of that lineup in San Diego. And to finish the season off with 24 home runs, and if I get my notes out here, my mouse will actually work for me. 24 home runs, 85 RBI. Not the numbers I expected to see, out of Profar based on his history, and how San Diego used him in the past. Obviously, Profar had a lot of flexibility, willing to pretty much do whatever. And then with the appearance of Jackson Merrill and in the different situations happening throughout the infield throughout the season, Profar was just electric in his capability of being able to fill in and do what was needed to be done. So Profar in the power category now. A lot of moving parts in San Diego, where everybody is excited for them right now in the playoffs going into 2025. Does Profar fit into that situation? I believe this was a one-year deal. I don't expect him necessarily to be back with San Diego. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure he's a free agent again. Do you expect to see this, the same kind of opportunity present itself for Profar to take advantage of first and foremost? And then if it does, can he continue to let it roll? Because honestly, his rolling chart they're not screaming at me like, yes, this is something that's going to be continuous for Profar moving forward. First half is where all his power was. Second half, his power was below average every step of the way. Making fine decisions, and his contact rate was pretty much great pretty much all season. But that power really dropped off in the second half, which is, where I'm putting all my attention on, obviously, at the moment. Any thoughts on Profar?
Love Profar. We briefly alluded to the NFBC postseason hold'em, and it's got some weird wrinkles, but you have to have at least one person from each playoff team in this round, and a maximum of 3. And San Diego was tough for me. I'm definitely using 3 of their players. I expect them to move on. And of course, everybody wants to use Tatis, Machado, but I thought this was an opportunity to differentiate my team with a good player. I really wanted Profar on my team. It meant only taking one of their starting pitchers and not using Machado. Of course, I'm using Jose Ramirez at third base.
Sure.
That's great. But only using one pitcher so that I could have Tatis and Profar. Love Profar. And yeah, his power metrics were down in the second half a little bit, but the results weren't. 10 home runs in 226 at bats. He had 14 and 338 in the first half. So roughly, probably right there at the same rate of home runs. And the RBI are great with that lineup. And I think Profar will be back with the Padres, especially if they have a good postseason and he has a good postseason. He's been there for the better part of the past 5 seasons now and performed the entire time. Yes, this power was a little unexpected, even from him, from what we have seen in the past. But like I said with Patel Marte, right? 31 years old, and I'm just going to sit here, and I got a little more weight on me. I'm going to put behind it, and I'm going to hit a couple more home runs than I used to. I think we could see this from Profar for another 2 or 3 seasons. I really do.
I'd like to see Profar go back with San Diego. I mean, this was also this is San
He's
Diego.
a huge part of this team.
You got to remember, this is a San Diego outfield that had going into the season, we had no idea who was going to be playing in that outfield. They had absolutely nobody kind of penciled in of names that we were, interested in. Obviously, we expected Tatis to be in there if he wasn't going to get injured. Profar was a wild card. Jackson Merrill wasn't a guarantee. to do one to play, never mind to do what he did, obviously, until he was, announced to be on the roster, and then obviously, is competing for NL Rookie of the Year. And so, I mean, it seems as though Profar has an opportunity to come back and continue to be a starter in that outfield going into 2025, if they are so obliged. All right, so we spent a lot of time on power categories here, Kevin.
Yeah, well, and real quick, 15-team 5x5 roto. Where do you think Jerks and Profar came out amongst outfielders for the auction calculator to end the season?
I mean, just the fact that 24 home runs was still in like the top 45 overall in Major League Baseball for home runs. I'm going to say he was probably top 15 in outfield.
12th outfielder in all of baseball for fantasy 5x5 roto.
Yeah, that's
ahead of Britton Doyle, ahead of Jackson Churio, ahead of Brian Reynolds, all guys that we know had really solid seasons. Jerks and Profar was better.
I mean, this just goes to show you like the overall game that he brought to the table in 2024. Hopefully he can repeat that in 2025 as well. So like I said, we talked a lot about power. Let's get into speed. But before we do that, we do need to take another quick break. All right, we're going speed here. We're going to speed round through the speed section here. Stolen bases and runs. I got two names on here, so I'm going to throw out the first one. It's going to be quick only because I'm going to, spoiler, I do not expect this to happen again next year. And I definitely did not expect it this year, as I dropped Matt Chapman in my Dynasty League at the end of last year during the playoff run, my playoff run, and did not look back. But Matt Chapman totally rubbed it in my face with 98 scored runs and 15 stolen bases. Now, we expected stolen bases to be up across the board once again this season. And overall, I think there were obviously a lot more, guys chasing 50 or 40 stolen bases. Matt Chapman, not one of those, obviously not chasing 50 stolen bases per se, but still not somebody. Every time I would see his name pop up in, the tweets that show up every stolen base, or he just popped up on some kind of notification. I'm like, wait, what? Not a name I expected to see in that list. So the fact to see, he does get plenty of opportunity now in San Francisco and will be there for quite some time moving forward. Obviously liked by the new, president of baseball operations, Buster Posey, to give him that contract. And so I just don't know if I expect to see. This should be a one-time thing. Maybe we continue to see double-digit stolen bases from Matt Chapman, but not something I expect to see. I'm not drafting him for 15 stolen bases. This was a pleasant surprise. If you did hold on to him, you did draft him pretty late. But also to see him in pretty much the middle of the lineup all season and still score close to 100 runs on the season as well, was had to have been a pleasant surprise for anybody that was putting him into their corner infield, their corner infield slots, assuming he wasn't starting third base. He's not drafted as a starting third baseman in most scenarios. Is Chapman somebody that you had anywhere and you were more aware of this? I definitely didn't have Chapman anywhere, so the fact that I saw him close to 100 runs was the thing that stood out the most.
Yeah, I did have him. So, but as it was happening, it was double-digit stolen bases. Where's this coming from? Yeah, it was surprising, even though I saw it happening in real time. Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me.
All right. Well, let's see. You got somebody on here that is not surprising that he would steal bases, but just the fact that his overall numbers, what stood out for you for this guy?
Yeah, so Andres Jimenez for the Cleveland Guardians surprised me a little bit because, like I said, second base was really, really bad. Andres Jimenez was drafted 2 rounds on average in main events ahead of Ketel Marte, and I think most would say had a disappointing season. And overall, it wasn't great for where he was drafted. But then when you compare it to how the rest of the position performed, and you realize he still got us the 30 stolen bases, which is a big part of why we drafted Andres Jimenez with
Mhm.
a batting average that wasn't absolutely horrible. I was surprised that he got to that 30, and I did have him on a team. I just didn't realize that he was getting me as many stolen bases as he was. So I thought he was worth mentioning here. Somebody that Uncle Ted brought up in the chat earlier, and unless you're a Cubs fan, or we're really into fantasy baseball, so you're paying attention towards the end of the season, you probably don't realize how good Pete Crow Armstrong was in the past last couple months of the season. There was I heard people talking about cutting him even post All-Star break when he was just starting to show signs a little bit. I
Mhm.
was hearing, yeah, you can cut PCA even in 12s, that things aren't working out the way we thought. But then once they got him into center field on a regular basis and regular playing time, it just seems like something clicked. And yeah, Uncle Ted's right. Pete Crow Armstrong was amazing down the stretch, and a lot of people may not realize it.
Yeah, another shout out to my home league where the guy who rosters Pete Crow Armstrong still has them in our league on a minor league deal, and apparently trying to trade them to anybody and everybody at our trade deadline in at the end of July, and
That's when he was
nobody
still bad. Yeah.
yeah, nobody was sniffing, and so obviously he was giving everybody crap by the time playoffs
Yeah.
rolled around.
Y'all
Like,
could have
oh,
had him for free.
it would have been nice. It would have been nice to have him on your teams at this point in the season. Um, yeah, just the fact that not that he came out of nowhere, but that he finally turned it on. Like he
Turned
finally,
around. Yeah.
finally became relevant. The only name I'll throw out there that was a surprise to me in these categories, again, we're really focusing on the stolen base and runs categories. Here's Willie Damas. Not surprising. He's always somebody's sleeper in some capacity, but the fact that he was still able to put up 93 runs scored, his highest of his career, on top of the 32 home runs, which was the also career high, but less surprising. And then again, like Matt Chapman, not only double digit stolen bases, which he's never done before, but 21 total stolen bases. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is a contract year for Willie Adames, so he, obviously wants to do. He wants to put together as much of a rounded game as possible going into free agency. So not total surprise there, but to see his former career high in stolen bases was 2022 with a total of 8, and then a jump up another double digits from there to 21 total, and he did 8 in 617, his former second career high prior to this 688 plate appearances that he saw in 2024. Shows I don't, again, another one where I don't necessarily expect Willie Adames to be given the green light from whatever team he's playing for in 2025 based on this one season. In the fact, I just think that Milwaukee was in a position to run wherever they possibly could. They saw opportunities. They get he did it. He was very successful on the base paths. Go ahead and do it. And we're going to get everything we can out of you in this final year. Do you, again, same thing as Profile, like, do you expect him to be given that kind of an opportunity wherever he goes, assuming he goes to even if he goes to a team that we already know is a running team in general, like the Seattles of the world, the Tampas of the world, et cetera, et cetera. Do you still expect somebody to, let him run amok?
Yeah, for the most part, there's a handful of teams where I'd be concerned maybe, but for the most part, it's part of his game. I think they'll let him run.
There you go. We'll see who he gives him that opportunity moving forward. So next one, opportunity, is the section we normally go into. So obviously this just talks about playing time and obviously batting average in general. I'm gonna throw this out here because I thought it was the low hanging fruit, and it was ultimately just because I'm reminded of the Oakland A's throwing up their first set of renderings of what may or may not end up being their Las Vegas stadium at some point in the future. On those renderings, you saw a lineup that was made up of at least players that were currently on the roster that they expected to still be on the roster by the time they were in Vegas. One of them being Brent Rooker. And at that point on the renderings, Brent Rooker, I believe, was hitting 304, which was just unbelievable, for lack of a better lack of a better word for it. And lo and behold, at one point in late August, he literally was hitting exactly that that batting average at 304. Ended the season with a 293 average with 546 at bats, over 600 plate appearances, I believe, as well. So, obviously doing whatever he needed to do to, get close to that 300 batting average, which nobody is surprised about the power he brought to the table. What all the other things that he could do. I just think to be hitting basically probably 40 to 50 points higher than you expect with a full set of plate appearances or a full set of batting, at bats to actually make that impactful, was extremely surprising. And I'd benefit if you were drafting him specifically for the power. Now, is this something that he can continue to work on moving forward? Again, being in that stadium up in Sacramento, I'm not going to put it past him at this point. He did it for a full season. It was very surprising in my eyes. But in all of his value still lives in power. If you look at that process rolling chart, it's all green. It's all green. But especially in the second half, his contact rates were all above league average. His decisions kind of teeter-tottered between league average, above and beyond and below. But I'm not going to put it past him to be able to do this again in that new ballpark with this team. What says you, Kevin, about Brent Rooker?
I love Brent Rooker. I am so disappointed that the Royals had him for a little bit. Just not this 2 off seasons ago now, but fairly recently, he was a member of the organization and just never got a shot there. I've enjoyed watching him in Oakland for 2 seasons now, and we could have put him under power, right? The 39 home runs, amazing. And with that ballpark, as long as they say he's going to be ready to go for spring training, he did this injured all year long. Evidently, his elbow was bothering him all
All
season.
year.
He
Yep.
just had surgery the other day, and they say he'll be full go for spring training. If that's the case, once again, that ballpark in Sacramento, I'm loving some Brent Rooker next season.
Yeah, totally could have put him in power, but it wasn't surprising of what he did in the power categories. And I think
And he's the great thing about him, we've all seen his tweets, right? But then if you listen
oh
to
god,
Rates and Barrels, the days Trevor May is on there, who has been a teammate of Brent Rooker and talking about how curious he is. It's not just that he's tweeting about the metrics that we'd like to dive into, and a lot
sure.
of players don't, but he does. And curious is the word Trevor May uses. Love it when there's a player that in my mind, it's only a good thing, unless you start tinkering too much, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that can definitely happen. But I like how you're saying, like how Trevor May says that he called him curious. It's like not so much
Yes.
like, hey, I need to know every little thing so that I can make these adjustments. It's like, oh, you know what? What goes into that? What makes that stat tick? Does it matter? Like, there are stats made up all season long. Some of them stick, some of them don't, and some of them are actually impactful. And so, it's good to know, what's coming out there and seeing if something is actually impactful, but not holding on to every single one that gets thrown out there. Kevin, you got who's your name on here in the opportunity section that was a surprise in 2024?
Yeah, it's kind of funny calling this a surprise because it was his 3rd consecutive year with 640 plate appearances or more. But I think it came really quietly. The Cubs offense was up and down all season. At times, their offense looked amazing. At other times, they looked like that they were on the other side of Chicago. But it was very quiet to me to see Ian Happ go out there and match his career high in home runs. and just continue to do what he has been doing, stealing double-digit bases like he did for the first time in 2023 and was one short of that number in 2024, 13 rather than 14 last year. Uh, uh, Pushing 90 runs, 90 RBIs. It's not that that's really that surprising to me if we were talking about this in draft season. But if you'd asked me in late August, what kind of season is Ian Happ having? I'd have said, probably about average, maybe a little below. Not a top 20 outfielder in fantasy baseball, which is what he was by a lot, easy. So I just think it was really quiet of Ian Happ for the third consecutive season, just being this is going to be, he's been in the league since 2017. He's old and boring now. This is going to be a big draft champions target for me, somebody like Ian Happ here.
Just the fact that, yeah, like you said, it is third straight season with all of those plate appearances, but it's never something I expect out of Ian Happ, even though he's been
He led
doing it
off
for
a lot
3
of the year.
years. Yeah. Yeah, so keep an eye on that situation. All right, we'll get into our pitchers, our surprise pitchers from 2024 right after this quick break. All right, Kevin, we've got, of course, in true off-season episode fashion, we are basically halfway through our featured topic here, and we're already an hour into the pod. So let's see where we end up here. But let's start off here in our wins and our volume categories here, wins and strikeouts. I'll let you lead us off here. Who was your big surprise in those categories?
Well, I don't know that it's as much a surprise. Once again, I just think it happened really quietly. I think the numbers that Christopher Sanchez in Philadelphia ended up with might surprise quite a few people. He's somebody that I really liked coming into this year. I drafted Christopher Sanchez a lot, and I think I got more out of him than I even expected. I think it would surprise a lot of people. We got Zach Wheeler, one of the best pitchers in baseball, Aaron Nola, great. Early in the season, Ranger Suarez was lights out. So that's probably part of it. He was the fourth best pitcher on his own team, but Christopher Sanchez with 11 wins and a 3.32 ERA, he was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that I just didn't expect to continue to kind of roll the way he did throughout the course of the season. Yeah, obviously has his moments and has a decent arsenal that comes through, but to kind of see him continue to do it throughout the season was, instead of going back and forth either, whether or not this was going to be a situation where he's like somebody had to be forced back into the bullpen. I think that was a lot of worry for a lot of people as well. And not to have him repeat that and for him to be, as productive as he was, definitely a surprise. I won't spend too much time on the first name I'll throw out here, and maybe that's just for your benefit because I'm going to pick a Royal here. Seth Lugo. I just think with all the talks of all of these guys like Michael Kings and the guy Christopher Sanchez for that matter, making the move from relief pitcher to starting pitcher and seeing the success, Seth Lugo is right up there. We talked about Seth Lugo being one of those guys last season who really wanted to find a situation that was going to allow him to start on a regular basis. And he found that for a little while in San Diego, but I feel like there was a little bit of moving parts. They did the same thing with Nick Martinez. And so finally going over to Kansas City, getting that opportunity and just rolling with it. And the fact that he was able to kind of throw as many pitches as he did, he's got definitely like a kitchen sink approach and really being able to find as much success as he did on, it was like a perfect storm too. It's like with the Royals being on the upswing and being a team that went through such a positive, a winning streak, multiple winning streaks throughout the season. And he was definitely a part of that, but he also benefited from that as well. We're talking obviously about racking up the wins throughout the course of the season. And so I think that's something that I'm gonna be a little bit more attuned to as I go into drafts and I'm considering the kind of pitchers. If you Kevin, we talk about chasing wins all the time. It's like the way you can chase wins. In at least the lesson I'm getting out of Seth Lugo is another way to chase wins is to finding a pitcher who's finding a new opportunity on a new team, who's on the team themselves is on the upswing. I'm not saying, somebody is trying to find a new life in themselves with the White Sox or, with even with the A's or the Nationals. Is like a team that looks like they are doing everything that they need to do, or they're in the process of getting better. And now you not only can take advantage of that new opportunity, but they can do it on a good team. So more power to everybody who was on top of Seth Lugo and held on to him, from the get go, from the start to the finish, and got those 16 wins from him throughout the 2024 season. Did you expect Seth Lugo to do this for your Royals, Kevin?
Not this much.
No.
I thought he'd be good. I didn't expect he'd be this good. He's in 5x5 roto. He's the 8th best starting pitcher in baseball. I
And
did not expect that.
there's also something to be said. Like the other part of chasing wins is obviously you need to look at their bullpens. And Kansas
Yeah.
City, didn't all season didn't have the best bullpen throughout the season. So the fact that he was able to do this throughout, to rack up more than 15 wins on a team that didn't always have his back or didn't always have every starter's back through the season was extra impressive.
Second in all of baseball in innings pitched. That helps a lot.
Yeah, if you don't have to you don't have to put the onus on the relievers to screw you over by the time the 7th 8th innings come around. That definitely helps. Other name I'll throw a shout out there is Rhino Blanco. Just this has got to be a surprise in general, because it's like I think most people seeing obviously the no hitter early on in the season from Blanco, kind of just coming quote out of nowhere with the Houston Astros and just sticking the landing and running with it. Not what you expected to see. Like the fab bids in all my leagues were not exorbitant after that no hitter. It's not like he was available everywhere. Not many people had him for the no hitter, but the fact that you were able to hold on to him from then on and wreak as much benefit as he was able to provide, finish the season. Not only like I could have put him in any category, literally any category that we're talking about here. An under 3 ERA and a 109 WHIP, 13 wins though we're talking about, and in as many strikeouts as he was able to provide in 165 and a third innings, really provides you provided you with this was value that you were getting off the wire as well, not somebody you drafted. And so biggest surprise that you could consider when you didn't only have to spend fab dollars on them, and you probably didn't spend that much on them as well.
Right. And this is something we talk about fairly often. Part of the reason that I like streaming pitchers, and sure, early in the year, you hope that you're streaming off of your roster, not off of the waiver wire, but we're looking all of the time, looking for these guys. But the reason is, if you're not streaming guys like this, then you're not going to get them because somebody did stream them. So when something good happens, they're not available on the waiver wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and obviously the ultimate goal of streaming is so that you don't have to stream anymore. And so
Exactly.
this is the type of guy that you stream and you're like, oh, you know what? Let's see if he can take advantage of this next matchup and the next one and the next one. And ultimately he did. So there you go. All right. Let's get in. Like I said, I could have put Blanco in any category, including the ratio categories, which we'll get into now. Kevin, who stood out for you in the ratios that made, ratios are difficult because you got to have the innings to make the impact, whether you're streaming them like the guys we talk about all the time, or you're holding on to somebody and you're like, you know what? If this guy was on my roster, like that many innings, that low of a ratios, that could have made a big impact. Is there a name that stood out for you in that realm?
Yes, and typically, ju- alluding to what you just brought up, typically, if I'm talking a reliever in this spot, I want to hit that 70 inning threshold, and my guy didn't, but he got really close. Uh, but and I went reliever because typically throughout the season, that's the guys we're talking about here. Not always, but typically. But 1.76 ERA and 0.99 WHIP in over 66 innings on the season. 5 wins, 5 saves, so helping bonus in both of those categories as well. Alex Vesia for the Dodgers. 33.1% strikeout rate. His walk rate was up this year. Luckily, he got away with it, and his whip was still below one, even with that walk rate over 12%. It had been lower than that the previous 2 seasons. So it'd be nice if in 2025 we see that walk rate come back down. This is the third time we've seen a 33% or higher strikeout rate, and he's still in his 20s. So I like Alex Vesia going forward, in this category that we talk about all the time, especially a guy that for the Dodgers was able to sneak in the 5 wins and 5 saves for us.
Yeah, you did this right, and I did not. I like that you picked the reliever because you're right. This is usually the guys that we are talking about in
I
this
love your pick
category.
because especially we don't I don't expect good ratios from one of the guys you picked here, at
Either
least.
one of them. Like, there's
Yeah,
absolutely no reason like, all right, you didn't draft Eric Fede for the wins or the volume that he didn't really provide. I mean, it's hard to do when you spend most of your season with the Chicago White Sox. But to get 31 games on the season in 177 in the third innings and still rack up a 3.3 ERA and a 1.16
amazing.
WHIP, that is incredibly helpful. Coming from this was obviously for most of the season, especially in the first half. Eric Fede was the streamer, he hands down, right? Um,
I'm surprised we haven't heard more about this. As much as we heard about him as a sleeper in draft season, and then him to come out and do this, and now we don't hear anything about it. That's
yeah.
it's kind of shocking to me.
Well, he really, I mean, he disappointed a lot in St. Louis. Like, he just did not continue to do what he was doing in Chicago once he moved over and was traded to the Cardinals. So I think that's part of it.
That's
Kevin,
probably it. Yeah.
we talk about it all the time. But you talk about it in this episode. We focus on second half stretches so often, and when somebody has a poor second half or just less than what they were doing in the first half, then yeah, it's easy to be like, all right, well, that's not what I'm focusing on this week. So we'll continue to move on. But the name I think you were alluding to, the second name here, was Dylan Cease, who somehow, obviously, had his no-hitter, for also former White Sox, but now in San Diego. But for him, for Dylan Cease to finish the season with 189 in the third innings and a 1.07 whip is, I want to say it's crazy. It's not totally crazy. I mean, he finished with a 1.11 in 2022 with similar innings, 184 innings there. But coming off of a season in 2023 where he pitched similar innings and finished with a 1.42, just that, I think that's just the expectation everybody really had for Dylan Cease, or the majority of people,
That's what
because
I had.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every year before that, 1.25, 1.44 in his limited sample in 2020, 1.55 in his rookie campaign in 2019. So this is, somebody who, like, everybody knew he had the stuff. He could, get the strikeouts. If he was on a winning team, he could probably go deep enough into games as long as he was efficient enough to make it five. And for him to do what he did, 33 starts and 189 innings, 14 wins in that time as well for a winning ball club. Obviously, makes it a little bit easier to do. It's just the 1.07 that obviously stands out. Will he repeat? Obviously, still in San Diego next year. Is It's to be seen. I gotta assume that there's going to be some splitting of hairs here between somewhere between the 1.42 and the 1.07. But do you think if you are an over under on that split, which one do you think it's going to land in closer to the 107 or closer to the 142?
I,
And
closer to the 142. I love his strikeout stuff. I just am always worried about that with Dylan Cease, and this is the second time of his career now that it's been amazing, and twice in the last 3 seasons. So maybe I should lean the other way. I just have a really hard time trusting that particular number. Love everything else he does, but that's the number that still scares me with Dylan Cease.
sure, but even if it is closer to the 142, I'm like, it's probably not that much over the average there, which is not going to tank your that category. It's not going to help you, but it won't tank you the way that the 142 did. All right, final pitching category here, and it is a solo category. You can't really mix and match. We're not talking holds, so we're only going to talk saves here, Kevin. um, I'll lead us off here only because it's like this is the epitome of what we talk about. Like, even a closer on a bad or supposedly bad team, as long as they are the closer all year, can be valuable. And this is Kyle Finnegan for the Washington Nationals. What made it surprising is not so much that he got 38 saves for a not great team. Is the fact that Kyle Finnegan's not good. Like, he's just ultimately just not a good pitcher. And they had every opportunity to trade him at his peak, and they refused to do so. And they just kept throwing him out there, no matter how bad he looked. It was very similar to like Alexis Diaz in Cincinnati. It's like, so some reason this team loves this pitcher too much to give anybody else a shot. And if you rostered him all season and you got close to 40 saves out of him, you can hold your nose at the ratios. You can hold your nose at any of the blown saves that he might have thrown out there. But overall, Kyle Finnegan, you dropped him for one category and you got more than your fair share out of that, because he definitely wasn't your first closer that you drafted last year in 2024. Did you have Finnegan anywhere, Kevin?
I had him in a spot or two, and you're absolutely right. It's got to be a situation where, yep, give me the saves. I don't care what else you're doing, because his auction calculator numbers are hilarious. He earned almost $10 in the save category alone.
Right.
He barely earned $5 overall.
Just again, you have to hold your nose and be like, I only need
Right.
one. I
Give me
only
my
need you to do
saves.
one
That's all I
thing.
want.
Yeah. It's like
Yes.
drafting Billy Hamilton. It's like you just want
Yeah.
one thing. Any surprises in the save category, Kevin, that you noticed?
Um, Yeah, actually, I was gonna keep saying the same thing I've said for every category. Not really a surprise, but this was a surprise. This is a guy we got off the waiver wire. Well, I didn't anywhere. I wish I had. I actually drafted some Texas Rangers closers during draft season, none of which worked out because they brought in Kirby Yates. And not only did he run away and get his 33 saves, he was not Brandon Finnegan. He gave us a 1.17 ERA and a 0.86 whip to go with those 33 saves. 37 years old. But if you look at his velocities, he still throws. I mean, it was half a tick off of last season, but he still throws right at his career average and actually harder than he threw his first 2 seasons in the league. So I kind of expect we're going to see him doing this again next season. The Rangers got this out of him for $4.5 million. They're going to try to bring him back. It won't be 4.5 million. They
No,
might have
yeah,
to give
yeah.
him 6 or 8, but they're going to try to bring him back. I'm almost certain that Bruce Bochy would love to have Kirby Yates back as his closer in 2025.
Yeah, and Bochy's just the type of guy that, from all reports that I've read or headlines I've read and what have you, is just like once he likes somebody, like he just
Will Smith
yeah.
last year.
It,
Yep.
well, oh man, can we talk about if the Royals keep advancing, what kind of devil magic Will Smith is?
What's he worth on the free agent market if the Royals somehow pull this?
I don't care how
It's
old
like
you are,
everybody's going to think they have to have Will Smith.
you have to. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you don't have a chance if you don't. Um, that'll be absolutely amazing. I will literally throw like $100 on whatever team if the Royals win and Will Smith gets signed by any other team. $100 futures bet right away.
Yeah.
Like no question. Um, Cool. Yeah. So I was saying this before. I'm like, I don't know what it is. I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of closer mixing and matching just before the start of next season, whether it's free agents moving into new situations or just relievers shuffling through spring training and new jobs. And, we'll probably do a whole episode on this, obviously, and you should be listening to In the Pen for more actual knowledgeable reliever talk. But it just Kirby Yates is if Bochy doesn't get him back, does Kirby Yates find another closing job somewhere else?
If there's an old school manager like Bochy with the team, yes.
Fair.
That's what I'd be looking for. The type of manager.
All right. Final section. It's my final section during Fab season. We're gonna keep it here. This is the wild card. Is players that either just didn't fit into any one particular category, or maybe they fit into too many categories. Maybe that's my my situation. I like that we both picked. One of us picked a pitcher and a hitter. I threw the pitcher out there, and this is more my opportunity to apologize to Sarah Sanchez, who drafted Paul Skeens. I think it was like in the 8th round of our Glarf draft. And I think me over anybody else gave her more crap for that pick being too early because they had already announced that he was not going to be on the opening day roster. There was no timetable when he was going to be called up. And obviously, not only did he get called up earlier than I thought he was going to be, but he saw absolutely no, like, didn't have to wade into the pool. Like, he jumped right in and did start doing laps around the rest of the league. And he was obviously very impactful for anybody who did the stashing. And I am not one to be opposed to stashing rookies that I think are going to be helpful from day one, whenever that day one comes. I just thought day one was going to be a lot further along for Paul Skeens and the Pittsburgh Pirates than it actually ended up being. So, Sarah, enjoy. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed Paul Skeens on your roster. I'm sure you did. And the fact that he was able to do what he did for you. He did not. Unfortunately, he did not do that for me pretty much anywhere. I don't think I had him anywhere. And so more power to anybody who did take that chance on Paul Skeens. And again, the other National League Rookie of the Year competitor here. Who who wins National League Rookie of the Year between him and Merrill? Unless there's some other wild card name that I'm not thinking of, Kevin.
I think I would vote for Skeens. Pretty sure I would. I love Jackson Merrill, but Skeens was dominant, and I think that's the difference maker for me.
Sure.
I do understand those that are going to vote for the guy that ran out there every day. So I think Jackson Merrill's a great choice and perfectly fine with him being Rookie of the Year. I would vote for Paul Skeens, but I think Merrill wins it.
I hope Skeens wins just to so the Pirates don't get anything out of if he wins Rookie of the Year. So it's like it just proves it. Like if Skeens wins Rookie of the Year, it'll just kind of push. I think it could give an added push to more teams to make sure that their rookies are up on opening day.
I like that.
So there, I'm rooting for Skeens in that round. So, Kevin, close me out here with a good name in your wild card section.
Speaking of up on opening day, right? And I think I did something similar here. And going back to the beginning of the show, these aren't guys we typically get to talk about. They're not going to be available in Fab. So yeah, Jackson Churio is who I'm bringing up here. Not necessarily because there was anything too surprising. However, I think it would probably surprise some people to know that Jackson Churio is the 14th outfielder in auction dollars earned for 2024. 573 plate appearances. Nobody above him, nobody that earned more than him had less plate appearances. In fact, only one player, Jackson Merrill, had under 600 plate appearances. So we're getting this is our chance to talk about some of these young superstars. And the main reason I brought Jackson Churio up here, I think one, true 5 category production. He was positive in every category as far as auction dollars earned. That is amazing. I love that. But what I really want to talk about, Adam, and I'm not sure, I want to ask you, where are we drafting Jackson Churio? If he went as high as 37. That was kind of an outlier. I was just looking at 2024 ADP, but after we knew that he had been signed, so we assumed he would be on the opening day roster. He started going in 15 team leagues around that 5-6 turn. Now putting up a 2020 season with a 275 average as a rookie, where do you think we have to draft him next season?
Well, Kevin, I'll flip that back on you. We are up in that mock draft that we were talking about. We are at pick 22, though. I'm not sure I would stretch to 22 overall. This is a 12-team Yahoo style
Right.
format league. This not NFBC, so you can stretch that however you like. I don't know. I mean, I you have to assume you're not getting them. You're probably not getting them on that 5-6 turn. Moving forward, like you said, as high
No, we
as
got him there
yeah,
before he did what he did. So
exactly. So I mean,
maybe in a 12 we can get him there if that's where he was going in 15s. But I kind of doubt that too.
sure. I mean, the turns obviously are
I'm
different
thinking
overall
maybe
pace there.
3-4 turn in a 15, so mid to late fourth round in a 12. Not necessarily, I don't know if I'm willing to do that yet, but that's kind of where I'm guessing we'll start seeing him drafted.
Yeah, so you're saying, 45. You're a top
Yeah.
45 pick, top 40
Yeah.
maybe if you really want to stretch that out. But I mean, even in a 5 outfield, we saw this was a hot topic of conversation last year during draft season is that outfielders, it's like if you don't get a top heavy outfield, you might as well just wait because there's a giant cliff, there's a giant hole in those outfield positions that, if we start feeling the same way, that's going to push somebody like Churio up closer to that 40 mark. So like you don't want to be without your top 2 outfields, your outfield 1, outfield 2 being, as good as they possibly can be moving forward. So yeah, I mean 45 seems completely logical in a 12 teamer. That's going to be toward the back end of your 4th rounds. Obviously closer to, the beginning or even on the 3-4 turn like you mentioned in your 15s. All right. Well,
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
we'll have to make this pick, Kevin. But before we do that, I'm gonna let you close this out here with any I want to say final words of wisdom, but it's like the first set of words of wisdom heading into this off season as we find ourselves.
Well, I'm gonna go back to early in the show. Uncle Ted in the chat room said, "What do you think of my 15 team strategy for next year? Early rounds, infield, and a couple of catchers, a boss reliever, then working on outfielders and starter heavy on from there." This is somewhat similar to what I typically do. I think in the past year or so, I've gotten away from grabbing my second catcher so early. I still want one big one. I don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to infield, whether it's infield, outfield. I look more by position. Second base is going to be tough. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of eligible second basemen, and I was buying into. I had actually drawn back from Nick Pollock and Eno Saris and guys I listen to all the time. I was always you have to have a plan for second base when you go into your draft. Then we got spoiled for a year or two, and now I think we're definitely back to that. You have to know exactly what you're going to do at second base. So I get that for infield going in, but this is the type of discussions in the off season that I absolutely love. It's about the puzzle. We all know what players are great. How are we putting them together and fitting them all? So I love this. In my experience, taking two early catchers was a bit much. I was missing out other places. Now, though, we mentioned earlier in the show, we got 6, 7 guys that might have 600 plus plate appearances at catcher. Could be a huge advantage to get two of them. I also think you need the one reliever. So, yeah, this is what I love. Yeah, Uncle Ted, I think that's a great strategy. I might back off on the second catcher, but this is the kind of stuff that I love talking about all off season long right here.
Yeah, just the mixing and matching of the different strategies
Yeah.
that you can pick based on the
You're always
draft room
giving
you're in,
something up when you grab something you want.
no matter what. Yep,
That's yeah.
that's the rub. All right. Well, I think that's gonna close this out for our first off-season episode heading into the 2025 season, Kevin. This has
Yeah.
been episode 183 of On the Wire. Thank you so much for listening. On behalf of Kevin Hastings, I am Adam Howe, and we bid you goodbye.